Well, good morning. It's Thursday, June 17th, and we are gathered for a morning devotion. And again, using N.T. Wright's book, Hebrews for Everyone. And today we are in chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. What about us then? We have such a great cloud of witnesses all around us. What we must do is this. We must put aside heavy weights and the sin which gets in the way so easily. We must run a race that lies in front of us. We must run it patiently. We must look ahead to Jesus. He is the one who carved out the path of faith, and he's the one who brought it to completion. He knew there was joy spread out in waiting for him. That's why he endured the race, or endured the cross, making light of its shame, and has now taken his seat at the right hand of God's throne. He put up enormous opposition for sinners. Weighed up in your minds just how severe it was. Then we won't finish ourselves getting weary and worn out. I went to a school that took pride in itself on its outdoor pursuits. Set high in the Yorkshire Dales in northwest England, it celebrated its location in several ways. The annual climax being a 10-mile cross-country run over steep, difficult ground. Often as many as 80 or 100 boys would enter the race, with the purpose for most of us being not to win, we left that for the serious athletes, but to get around in a reasonable time, to forge on through mud and heather until we came back to the finish in a small town where the school was situated. The year I ran the race, I came, if I remember rightly, about 35th, respectable though undistinguished. But the thing I remember most vividly was the finish stretch, the last half mile or so. I had trained over the race over the previous weeks and had been around the actual course several times. I was quite used to the closing stage. Here we were, back again, almost to the point of rest and a bath and a hot drink. But this time it was totally different. I had known there would be spectators, of course, but I hadn't prepared myself for the hundreds of boys and parents and local people from the town who were turned out to watch as we all came back, bedraggled but mostly happy for an hour and a half of hard work. They were cheering, waving flags, clapping and shouting encouragement and congratulations. It went on and on, down the road into the town, increasing as we got to the middle, reaching an extraordinary roar as, with a friend of mine running beside me, I rounded the final bend and came down the road to the finish. All these people, where had they come from? And such noise. It felt like being a real celebrity, if for only 2 minutes. And so in our passage from Hebrews, we're getting towards the end now. We've built the case for Jesus being the Messiah. We've built the case for Jesus being the ultimate sacrifice. We've built all of this. And we've even talked about how we need to proceed by faith. And so the writer here in the beginning of chapter 12 is giving us 3 rules to live by in order to finish our race. And he says we have this great cloud of witnesses above. And we use this passage most oftenly on All Saints' Day as we remember those who have passed in the previous year and passed in our lives. But he's telling us we are in the midst of this time. We are in the midst of waiting for Jesus to come again, who is the Messiah. And so he gives us 3 things to stand by. First, get rid of the heavy weights that are slowing us down. And so in a race like Dr. Wright is talking about, people have practiced and practiced and practiced, and sometimes they wear extra weight on them, so when they run, they feel lighter. And so he's saying, the writer here is saying, get rid of those weights that weigh us down. And so you can use that analogy to say, get rid of the sin that is in our lives, that is weighing us down from finishing this race that God has set before us. And then the second point is that this race that we are in, this life that we are in, it's a long haul. And we must have patience, which we've talked about in previous days. We need patience to get through this race and this course. And finally, keep your eyes on a prize. Keep your eyes, at least, or your imagination, fixed on the finish line, and that no one who is the center of the cloud of witnesses waiting there to greet you, him or herself. And so at the end of this race, he's saying there will be people there to greet us. There will be, he uses the analogy of the crowds along the race path, but he's saying there will be a great cloud of witnesses at the end to greet us when we finish our course in life, when we finish our race. And he's saying, he's building this case again, that this is the better thing that God has created for us through Jesus. It's not about sacrificing and then just dying and being placed in a hole in the ground and waiting for that day of resurrection. It's about a life built around patience, freedom of sin and forgiveness and grace, and keeping our eye on the prize, which is being with God. And that's how he is building chapter 12 and getting us towards the end of the book of Hebrews.